So third year students, BA English Core, welcome to this semester. I am coming after a long time, finishing my COVID duty. So as the timetable has been assigned to you, so I have been given two papers. Paper 2, forms of literature, that is novel, and paper 3, that is literary criticism. Right? So as I have come to know through Dr. Joshi sir that he has finished 2 units from paper 3, right? So paper 2, I think it is completely left, so I will do that. So today I'll go through paper 2, that is novel. So paper 2, it has 4 units just like other papers. So unit 1, it has definition and characteristics of novel, and second sub-unit, it is development of novel as a literary form. So today I'll just go through definition, meaning and characteristics of novel. Yes, novel. Novel, if you people are familiar with the meaning of this word novel, right? Novel means new. Novel means new, anything new. So when we talk about or when we discuss about novel as a literary form, then we have to think about that why it is called novel. So novel as a literary form or novel as a standard literary form, it started in 18th century. 18th century. Otherwise, if we look at the history of English literature, we can find the roots of novel, or means earlier it was not called a novel. It was called some prose works or some, you can say, literary works which were written in prose. So they were considered just prose works, but they were not given the name as novel as a literary form. Clear? So novel, if we go back to the history, if we go back to the origin of novel, then we have to go back to 14th, 15th century, that is medieval age, right? So it started in Italy, and the word, this novel, Italian word is novella, right? Novella and Boccaccio. Boccaccio is considered the first, you can say, writer or a poet who started writing some prose works, and they were generally called as romances, right? So that was, you can say, the beginning of prose works. Later on in 15th or 16th century, 17th century, yes, there were many writers who started writing literary works in prose. Sometimes they were called travelogues, sometimes they were called, yes, in 14th century, 15th century, they were called romances. Or in 16th, 17th century, they were called works of histories. But novel as a literary form, novel as a standard literary form, it emerged only in 18th century. And from 18th century onwards, novel had become a dominant literary form. And if we look at today, or if we go back to 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, then we would find that yes, novel was the most dominant, or you can say a very fast developing literary form, right? So we have to think about that, why novel had become so fast developing literary form or genre. So novel, its origin lies in medieval romances, right? And romances, they were fantastic tale of love and adventure. Boccaccio, yes, his world famous work, or it was a collection of love stories in prose, that was Decameron. Decameron, yes, it was the first literary work which was written in prose by a great writer in 14th century Italy. And this Decameron, it is a collection of short stories written in prose, and those stories, their theme, it was love and adventure, right? And that's why they were called romances. So novel, a long narrative in prose detailing the actions of fictitious people, right? So why do we call that it is a long narrative in prose? So novel is different from short story, novel is different from drama, novel is different from other literary forms like sonnet, or you can say epic. Why? Because it is written in prose. Another thing, it is a narrative. It is in narrative form. Clear? So it is a narrative form, it is written in prose. Another thing, that writer is free to write on anything, to write in endless papers. Means a writer is free to write or to extend the story to any extent. Clear? So that was a long narrative in prose detailing the actions of fictitious people. Meredith, he called it a summary of life, and a great novelist of 18th century, Henry Fielding, he called that a comic epic in prose. Right? So I just go through another. I just read it out. A novel would be defined as a long narrative work of prose fiction containing characters, incidents, and plots. Right? So just like a drama, yes, a novel has characters. Novel means it has its elements: plot, characters, dialogues, or you can say settings. The word novel comes from Italian word novella, meaning a piece of news or a tale, and it was first applied to the tales like Boccaccio's Decameron, which were very popular in the 14th century. Though it originated much after other genres like poetry and drama, it is one of the most popular forms of literature today. Origin and growth. The roots of novel form may be traced to ancient Greece and Rome. Okay, that is quite bad. Okay. Greeks wrote stories called romances that describe the tales of love and adventure. Roman examples of this form include the Latin verse Satiricon, the 1st century Gaelic writer Petronius, and Metaphorsis, also known as the Golden Age, Golden Hours, 1st century by Lucius Appius. Other foreigners of the form are Thomas Malory's Middle Ages, that is Mortal the Arthur, published posthumously in 1485. Philip Sidney's Arcadia and Thomas Nash Picard's narrative, that is Unfortunate Traveller. These are some examples of prose works. We cannot call them as a novel, but they were written in prose. Right? But anyway, they paved the way for novel in coming years or in coming century, 18th century. Then 7th is Don Quixote. Right? Don Quixote is a wonderful prose work, or in today's time we can call that novel also. Critics are divided in their opinion as to which work could be credited as being the first novel in English. Okay, so now then the popularity of the novel grew with the passing of every century. In the 19th century, many great novels were written by authors such as Walter Scott, Jane Austen, Bronte sisters, George Eliot, Thackeray, Charles Dickens, Anthony Trollope, Hardy, Henry James, and to name so many. In the 20th century, the novel saw tremendous changes. Yes, in 20th century, yes, that was a remarkable period in the history of novel. Right? Yes, we have the origin, we have, you can say, the roots. of novel in 18th century, right? And yes, there were many reasons which led the way, which paved the way for the development of novel as a literary form, right? So yes, if we have to understand that, then we have to go through the entire 18th century or history of English literature, and especially the 18th century. Uh, uh, right? So now, yes, so 20th century, and why it became so dominant, or we can say this is yes, in the 20th century, the novel saw the tremendous changes and became a highly sophisticated art form in the hands of writers such as Joseph Conrad, Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, John Fowles, Graham Greene, William Golding. Right? These were the great 20th century novelists who wrote novels on different topics, themes, subjects with different techniques. In the 21st century, novels are being written, and still they are in the process. People are writing, writers, they are writing novels on different topics and different subjects. Alright? So today, just for introduction, I think it is enough that it is, yes, you people, the students, just if you want to understand really the development, growth of novel, then read 18th century, right? Which were the forces, which were the regions that novel had come into? Otherwise, before that we look at that, yes, we had other literary forms, poetry, drama, but what were the reasons that in 18th century, all of a sudden, that writers, they turn towards writing novel, right? So there are many reasons. Yes, because 18th century poetic tradition. Yes, writers, they were forced, they were compelled by the literary critics of the time, or you can say the literary canons of the time, that yes, you have to write poetry, and especially in that poetic diction, or you can say that heroic couplet. So there are many reasons that which forced the writers to move towards prose. Yes, and then there were some writers, Richardson, and I'm just missing that, who started writing periodical essays. And these periodical essays, they were essays written for, you can say, the ladies of middle classes people, or middle class ladies, who used to stay at home and they had nothing to pass the time. So yes, writers, they started writing these periodical essays in newspapers, and they used to read them. So initially they were on weekly basis, later on they might have been written on daily basis, and then some writers, they started compiling them and then yes, publishing a book. So that was the beginning of novel. Okay, so you people just go through that 18th century prose, 18th century you can say reasons, the resources which forced them to move towards prose, and how this prose led towards novel. Okay, so I think for today, for the introduction, it is enough. Okay, next lecture we'll go ahead. Okay, sure.